Hello everyone, this is POW ponderonweather. In this update, we're going to be talking about Europe turning cold as we're tracking 2 snowstorms and Arctic air. So if you're new to the channel, click the subscribe button and notification bell to get all my daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. Good morning everyone. This is your Tuesday, November the 16th update. And what we're taking a look at here is your afternoon temperatures on the North American view. And this afternoon, you can definitely see all the cold air is really bottled up well to the north. It's still below freezing in Alaska. They've had a lot of snow as of late, and we're just kind of waiting for some sort of trigger to push some of that cold air further south. You can see this mini cold front that we're going to be talking about this week that went through yesterday that brought all the heavier rains off the west coast again. And then in the interior regions, a lot more higher winds. They had a lot of high wind warnings out there in Montana. But you can definitely see the warm surge out ahead of it, widespread, if not almost 80 degrees in much of Texas, getting into Oklahoma, just kind of waiting for this cold front that's going to be hitting midweek this week. So let's take a look at some of the teleconnections of what's happening down the line. So if you can take a look at the AO, which is your Arctic oscillation, you can definitely see right around that 20th time frame, it starts to go negative, and it continues to go negative. It's not going to be this kind of wavy pattern where we get these subtle hints of cold shots and then it retreats back north again. So we're looking at a little bit more sustainable cold as we get into that Thanksgiving week and then going into December, because we're starting to see kind of the teleconnections starting to come together. The NAO as well also goes negative at the same time, going through all the way through the rest of November, starting from that November 20th, 21st time frame. And then as well as the PNA, which is your Pacific North American, that actually starts to go positive. And what that typically implies is a lot of the warmer conditions are going to be more or less confined to our western parts of the US. And then a lot of the colder conditions are going to be more or less confined to the central and eastern 2/3 of the US. You can see the EPO was your Eastern Pacific oscillation. It does contain a little bit more neutral to somewhat positive. So it's not the most bullish look, but I think with the AO and the NAO both going negative at the same time, it's going to allow this EPO to push further negative over time, and that's going to be able to drain that colder air into the eastern 2/3 of the US. So, but an early indication is Europe. So let's take a look at this. So this is the model going into that November 21st time frame of Europe. And you can see as the teleconnections starting to go negative, we're somewhat neutral in Europe. It's, sometimes below average, sometimes above average, but you can start to see some of the colder temperatures well to the north trying to push into Europe. So by the time we get into that Thanksgiving time frame, it drastically turns much colder in Europe. Now we're seeing those 20, if not upwards to almost 30 degrees below average anomalies impacting Europe. And that's around Thanksgiving. So that's 10 days from now. And it's also kind of a leading indicator, because typically Europe gets the cold first, and then it goes into the US. But it also tells me once it turns cold in the US and the eastern 2/3, we've got sustainable cold. So it's not going to just be like a quick hit. We've got sustainable cold penetrating further into the United States, with Europe as a leading indicator of it turning drastically colder. And I think it even turns much colder as we get deeper into Thanksgiving and then going into December. So let's take a look at some of the temperatures for Thursday with that cold front that we're going to be talking about in the midsection of the week. So I don't want to downplay this cold front, because there's still a lot of cold air with it. I mean, this is your temperatures for November 18th time frame as you wake up on Thursday morning. And you can definitely see, widespread teens for much of Montana into Wyoming, much of the Dakotas here, getting into Colorado, even 20s for New Mexico, upper portions of Arizona here, 20s for the panhandle of Texas, freezing again in Oklahoma, into Kansas, into Missouri, into Iowa, Minnesota here. So yeah, it's definitely some colder temperatures, and about 40 degrees, say, for the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And as you wake up on Friday, it's still cold. I mean, those temperatures push a little bit further off to the east, but yeah, still widespread 20s. Again, another freeze in Oklahoma. Portions of Arkansas will freeze, not quite a freeze into the DFW area, right around 37 degrees, say, for the airport. But for the outlying areas, again, could be close to freezing into the Dallas-Fort Worth area, as the colder air will continue to try to push for a little bit further south and eventually push into the southeast, getting into our eastern parts of the U.S. with those still widespread 20s for Illinois. But now let's take a look at the overall big picture of what these two potential snowstorms, they're going to be on the table through the 21st, through actually in the end of the month of November. So here's the overall big picture of the northern hemisphere view, and taking a look at how all this is going to play out. So by the time we get in that 21st time frame, yeah, the AO goes negative, the NAO goes negative. So that's an indication of this paint bomb creating that blocking feature that allows the trough to dig in underneath, pulls that trigger and pulls the colder air further south, now entering the U.S., entering the upper Midwest here, as we have a trough trying to develop off the California coast here. And as we get into that 27th time frame, you can almost see kind of the conveyor belt of colder air continuing, trying to push and pull in systems every kind of 3 or 4 days. And because we have that first system, and I think it's going to be impacting the more or less the northeastern mid-Atlantic states around the 23rd, 24th time frame. But going in the 27th time frame, we could yet have another signal of yet another storm, and this could be more of a coastal hugger impacting the Northeast for a nor'easter, as we still have that blocking feature starting to really get its act together up in Greenland here. So by the time we get into the 30th time frame, going into December 1st, you can see the conveyor belt really starting to unload. We got the blocking up here up to the top, and it's just a conveyor belt of troughs setting up over underneath, pulling in that colder air, draining and getting really active. And this could be setting the stage for a pretty active, colder time frame period, as well as active storm tracks pretty much every 3 or 4 days for our northern and eastern 2/3 of the U.S. So let's take a look at the SOI. So these are early indication of storm signals. We talked about this yesterday, that in a La Nina, we have some drier, obviously some drier type conditions down further south with a less active subtropical jet. But there are times, there's indications where that subtropical jet can get active. And these are one of these times coming up with an early indication of a negative drop in the SOI. And this is a lagging indicator. So this is about 10 days out, and this could be our storm signal that could be our coastal hugger coming up the East Coast by the time we get into that 20, 26, 27, 28th time frame. So there's actually 2 storm signals on the table coming up for the rest of the month. But the first storm signal is going to be happening as we start that Thanksgiving week. We can see the vorticity index really trying to wrap around with that horseshoe, really taking shape as it digs in, pulls in a lot of that colder air, and snow will start to fly over Wisconsin, over Illinois, over Indiana by the time we get into that Monday, that 22nd time frame. And as it continues to dig, and as that low pressure comes off the coast and it actually looks to swing back into the interior regions, it's going to put a lot of snow, and heavier snow. It could even go negative tilt at times, and that's an indication of some heavier snowfall that could fall over the mid-Atlantic states into our upstate New York. So as we take a look down the line, here's potentially our second storm system. This is the drop in the SOI index that's currently happening right now. So as the lagging indicator, Nine, 10 days out, here we go. I mean, we got a developing trough underneath. This is Thanksgiving, so we could have inclement weather of this trough trying to get its act together down here in our southern subtropical jet, and this will go into potentially into the Gulf and right up the coast. But here's our first storm signal the Climate Prediction Center has already highlighted, so they're on board and indicating that a risk for heavy snowfall around that 23rd, 24th time frame for Michigan, for upstate portions of Indiana. This is their heaviest snowfall, pretty much all of Ohio, pretty much all of West Virginia, going into Pennsylvania, going into all of New York here, going into central portions of Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, all in the main. So those are the areas that could be hit the hardest with this upcoming snowstorm that's going to be on the table for that Tuesday, Wednesday timeframe of next week leading up to Thanksgiving. So here's the overall radar depiction and how all this could potentially play out. Yes, by the time we get into that afternoon hours on the 23rd, on that Tuesday, we could be having a lot of snow trying to wrap around as this upper level low will really start to get cranking and really gets its act together. Teleconnections go negative, draws in that colder air, and then on the back side we've got it all changing over to snow and to portions of Michigan here, or portions of Wisconsin here, around the Great Lakes, going into Illinois, into Indiana. And this will feed into portions of Michigan here as well, but especially really start to get its act together once it gets down here to portions of West Virginia, going into western parts of PA, going to parts of like Pittsburgh area. We could be looking at some heavier snow by then, and then as it really starts to get its act together, going into Wednesday morning, the 24th. Yeah, it still wraps around. Look at the tight isobars. So these winds could be cranking too. So I don't know if it actually reaches blizzard type criteria, but yeah, we're looking at some heavier snowfall as we go into Tuesday night, going to pretty much all day Wednesday, as that upper level low will continue to pull inland. This will be more of a northern interior of snowstorm. But yeah, much of the Ohio is going to get crushed with some heavier snowfall going into Pennsylvania, going into upstate New York, and then along the Great Lakes with some of that lake enhanced as well. And this will continue to press off and push off on Wednesday night. So you're looking at about a 24 to 36 hour time frame that we could be looking at picking up some pretty impressive snowfall totals. I can't go over like exact totals right now, but this is more or less your active storm track, because we're still obviously 7 or 8 days out. But this is definitely looks like where the storm track is gonna be in this part of the country, with that 540 line right here elongating. And this is exactly where the Climate Prediction Center has highlighted that the most heaviest part, or this heaviest risk for that heavy snowfall to fall within that time frame. But now let's take a look at our second storm track. Look at what the models are already indicating with the 10-day lagging indicator. The SLI index is telling us right now the southern jet is going to start getting more active by the time we get into that Thanksgiving time frame. Okay, so look at the 540 line now going into Dallas-Fort Worth. So that's an indication we could be looking at potential possibly freeze by then. They haven't seen a first freeze. Typically their first freeze is November the 22nd. So this would be more or less kind of right in line. But as this pulls through, I think it more or less kind of, flips Texas. Technically, it's kind of a glancing shot of cold air as this pushes. But as this low really starts to get its act together, and as it pulls in some of that colder air, we'll start to probably see a changeover by the time we get into that Tennessee area, Kentucky area, West Virginia area again, going into PA again, as this one could be more or less more of a coastal hugger and impact more of our coastal areas versus more less of the interior areas. Because by the time we get into that 27th, 28th time frame, I'm just kind of showing these storm tracks right now. I can't show you amounts because this is too far out. but this is definitely that second snowstorm. This is on the table for that 26, 27, 28 time frame, because the SOI is already telling us the southern jet is going to be a lot more active. And this, as it pulls in with those teleconnections dropping further south, pulls in that colder air, this could be more of a coastal hugger. So we'll have to see how much of this is going to be snow along the coastal areas. But still, this could be another snowstorm that's on the table by the time we get into that 26th, 27th, 28th time frame. And as we get into the morning hours on that Sunday, the 28th, that low will continue to remain off the coast, and then pulling in all that colder air and the snow over the top into Vermont, New Hampshire, and to Maine again. So definitely looking at two potential snowstorms that are going to be on the table, one for the 23rd, 24th, and the second one for that 26, 27, 28 time frame, leading towards the end of November. So hey, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely leave your comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update where I protect you before and after storm.